Yeah, I'd say, when things first started, myself and TJ had separate, freelance companies already. That kind of built into working with a lot of different artists, rather than just one project. And it really just became working. With a lot of the same people and working together a lot and kind of also in different mediums of design and creative that we decided to form something together to really create something a little bit bigger than ourselves, and make something more of a focus on how can we build a team and build an environment where we can really just elevate shows, and be able to take on more projects and bigger projects. There's only so much you can do on your own, and you need help. So um, that was one of the main reasons. As far as like absent and stage design, I think something that we have is I kind of come more from um, electronic music and hip hop and R&B and things like that. And TJ has a background more in pop and indie, so we were able to really like form together and bring different mediums and styles into other genres of music, and have a different eye and are looking for different things. So both of us kind of together working on the show really kind of yeah, creates this cohesive environment and aesthetic for some of the shows that we've been doing. I'd say it varies on the project. Um, some of these clients are personal relationships with different artists and things of, they're kind of drawn more to one person than the other. So usually at the beginning of the project, we both have our strengths and things we like to do. So I feel I'll handle a lot of the production side of things or the technical side of things, and TJ works a lot with the creative and show direction. So when we both work on projects, usually at the beginning of it, we kind of split up what the roles are, but we do understand all roles to where there's guidance and support, to create the show together. I'd say we're usually listening for really getting it out of the artists of what they want the show to be. They at the end of the day, we're building something for them, not for us, and that is sometimes I would say hard to extract. Sometimes there's artists that know exactly what they want and they have a vision for the show already. Sometimes they want us to create the vision, but everything is based around the music. So usually the first sit down is talking about what do they envision this being, and it's us kind of providing some support and the narrative around things, but discussing that with them to make sure that it fits with the music and their show. So we start off there, and then come back with a couple different options of stories, design, etc., and work through it with them. So it is a very collaborative process. I think for us in creating a show, it's not so much about design, but creating a narrative and overall story that ties the music, the album, the show all together as one, and something that's just cohesive top to bottom with all production elements and yeah, the artist's vision really. It can drive the performance in multiple ways. There's so many elements to design, especially with tech really just advancing more and more every year. One thing that has changed a lot is different gags and elements, whether it be lifts or flying an artist or kind of doing, these moments. So, one thing that has changed a lot for us now is placement of the artists on stage and direction of where they should be for what song, things like that. And that can really drive the show. From where the audience sees, there's a lot less of a flat stage and an artist just performing on it. Some of the shows we do, the artist is in the crowd or they're in the center of the stage, or we build a stage around the crowd. I'd say that's something that's kind of changed a lot, where we can really drive how the audience experiences the show as a whole. With design and movement and direction of where they are. For instance, we did Travis Scott's Utopia tour, and that was originally an in-stage concept, but he wanted to be as close to the crowd as possible. So for that, we built a stage that essentially split the arena in half, and it was just a very long runway essentially, and the stage was just that, with different lifts and elevation level. So, no matter where he stood on stage, he was as close to the audience as possible. And that really drove how interactive and yeah, and how much like interaction could happen with him and the audience. I'd say for creating emotion in the show itself is part of the story, and part of the kind of arc and narrative as the show as a whole. You have, I think, just being emotional the whole time can kind of get boring. So it's like we do try and create these like ups and downs and kind of create this narrative. So I think part of the like emotional intimacy like really just comes from looking at the show as a whole to create those moments. A lot of times there are artists that kind of want these spectacles or kind of Instagram moments or like clips, and a lot of times we look at the show as a whole and kind of choose, okay, what songs do call for that. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. So I think following the music and understanding what does work and doesn't work as a show, and figuring out where to place those things, and not forcing it, is, yeah, kind of one way that we try and lean on to kind of create that as a whole. We work with a lot of variation of different artists. I think one of our specialties is a little bit less of sticking to a specific style and applying that to every artist. I think, like I've kind of said before, we um, try and follow the creative and direction that comes from the artists themselves. And I think our specialty is like, how can we elevate that and take that to the next level. And a lot of it really becomes trying to tell this overall story and narrative, and enhance it the best way possible. Everything we try and do is something that can be high end and elevated, but while sticking to the roots of the artist and the creative, rather than trying to create something that's our own. It's really taking the base of the artist and who they are, and making the show about them and not us. The core idea of that is, she has this kind of old retro feel, and that kind of came from this New York penthouse, and that was the stage, and that was something we worked with Rick at Stu Fish on. So he's amazing at architecture and kind of built this base for us to work off of, and our job on that was to do the lighting design and really create this environment that can enhance the stage and choreo and all of these other elements that really had to tie all together. We've done quite a bit of TV performances, especially lately. I think it's very interesting. The Some of the challenges are really the amount of time you have. It's a little bit similar to a festival in a way, but even shorter, versus like a concert or a tour, where we start loading in the day before to build a stage. So a lot of it kind of, we'll talk with the artist about an idea or a concept they have, and the the problem with these TV performances really become all the limitations we have. A lot of times we have 5 or 10 minutes to roll on the whole stage and really make it unique, and custom to the artist. Um, and trying to do that and also create something that's very elevated and fits with them, can be very tough when, yeah, you only have 5 minutes to do something. It's not a lot of time. So really it becomes, how can we think of things strategically, what's going to be the most important, what's going to be the most impactful. A lot of things is using visuals, to kind of create a set extension behind the artist that can like tie in with the set piece that we bring in and kind of use what is already existing at the TV performance to its full potential, and still finding a way to make something that's unique that can fit to them, and using other elements like choreo and things like that to kind of add more value to the shows.
Solo tienes que vivir un verano en Nueva York.
Building some of these sets, um, there's a couple different ways that change a bit. I'd say sometimes the sets are, we try and be a little abstract with it sometimes, so it's not a specific location. So we can change the environment and change the story. Sometimes, the creative fits to where we can be living in one space the entire time, and the narrative is built around that. Um, so I would say it definitely varies, and we kind of look at that as a whole, and that's kind of like I've spoken on before of talking with the artist and figuring out what is the narrative and what is the overall story for the show. So then that way, we can build that story and make sure that the set design or scenic elements fit within that, and a lot of these things are using other props and elements on top of that to help us change the environment a bit, whether that's using the visuals as a set extension to change the environment and time of day, and location while we have this centerpiece, as well as bringing in, other scenic elements on top of that that can roll on and off stage that kind of help um, set the tone and add, kind of layers to what the environment is. My background is definitely a little bit more in electronic music and kind of seeing very large LED screens, and these different environments and looks that are created through that. And with having, these huge screens, you kind of have no choice but to kind of focus on visuals a little bit. So um, I think seeing some of these large shows like Anima, he just did a show at the Sphere. The Weekend has some large shows as well. I think kind of seeing these different like large extensions of the stage, and some of these don't even have set pieces in front of them. It can be a whole show on its own, and now taking some of those like things that we've seen in concepts. It also doesn't need to be so much and focus more on the stage and set and kind of using screens and other elements as supporting elements to the show, and creative as a whole. What I'm noticing is a lot of us are younger, as time changes, and a lot of these artists are becoming very young as well. There's a lot of acts that are very young, and when we're kind of creating a show, there has to be some type of relationship. So I think what's kind of helping with us is we're relatable to a lot of the artists we work with because we are kind of around the same age and environment and grew up around the same time that we understand them, I feel a lot better than some, designers that may be older. So I think that's one big thing. As well as a lot of us do kind of come from different backgrounds, with kind of technology and things that have advanced or, something that we've kind of grown up with. I kind of grew up with a large background in lighting and video design and kind of elements. So being able to take a lot of that and add value on the production side to things that maybe didn't exist years ago has been maybe a little bit of a easier learning curve, as well as AI and kind of there's so many tools now that kind of help us as a designer, with 3D modeling, AI, production elements that you know I think that we, understand more as well as the artists we work with, than, maybe people from before. Yeah. It's an interesting job that, unless you're within it, a lot of people don't understand what it is we actually do. For instance, my like parents and things like they still, don't understand. They'll come to a show, but it's like, oh, I just do lights or something. I think even from a audience perspective, some people mistake the sound person for the lighting person, or they think that lights and all these things are, programmed on their own, or it's all sound activated, but there's actually people, sitting down and creating these things. Um, and I think, yeah, everyone has different capabilities of what they do. So even, with kind of doing stage design, there are some people that kind of have different skill sets, whether that be just drawing things and having a team to support, or whether they can model themselves, or really being into textures and things like that. So I think there's really just a lot of layers of stage designers and different types, which is why um, there is, yeah, a lot of people for different types of designs, and people that different artists like to work with, because there is a variety. And I think trying to pair the right designer with the right artist and workflow is definitely huge to have a show that's successful.